Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this month's Business Advisory Committee, Superintendent's Business Advisory Committee meeting. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you all for Google hanging out with us, if you will. I'd also like to thank everybody else who is listening live stream, who may not be in the meeting with us. We're really excited to have people who are leaning in and hearing about the school district and have interest. And so after you listen to the commentary this evening, if you should have questions or follow-up information that you'd like to have, please don't hesitate to give Alana Cropper, our district treasurer, or Scott Prepples, that's me, an email or a telephone call. We're happy to help in any way that we can. So before we get going, if you'd like to introduce yourself so that we can take the roll and make sure that we have done our attendance portion, please. Thank you.
Who do you want to start first?
You, sir.
Good evening, Richard. Long time resident of Anderson Township, 2 kids through the system, and wonderful job that everybody's doing, and pleased to be a part of all this.
Greg
Hi,
Luke.
Anne-Marie Henkel.
Go ahead, Anne-Marie.
Anne-Marie Henkel. I'm just here present.
Greg Luke is here.
Teresa Kassman.
Bill Lyon is here.
Yeah, and Steve Fagan, Mercy Health. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Others that come in and others that need to speak during the meeting, certainly we'll get those recorded. We had 3 items on our agenda this evening that we were going to share with you. And I'm going to do that right now. I want to get into the first subject.
Whoa.
See what's on the screen. Alana, do you see on the screen?
Yes, the presentation is up.
So what I wanted to talk about is it's been about 7 months now, 6 or 7 months ago. Seven Hills, which is a church in the northern Kentucky area, much like a Crossroads, came to the school district, and they had interest in utilizing Anderson High School for church services or on Sunday mornings. And so they approached Rob Fellows. They spent a good bit of time with Rob and had indicated to him that they had interest in Anderson High School's auditorium. He talked to me a little bit about that. At that time, there was no formal request. It was an idea that they had. But the idea that the church had was expanding into the Ohio side of the river from the Kentucky side into Ohio, because they had a significant interest in the Anderson area. They want to participate and add value to the Anderson community. They have done all sorts of studies, demographic studies. They've looked at highways. They've looked at facilities. They've looked at all sorts of things that are important to them when they consider doing their work in a community. And some of the individuals involved are actually graduates of Forest Hill School District. So the goal is for them to add value to the community based on where Anderson High School is, based on its traffic patterns, on the availability of parking, and some of the other amenities that we'll talk about here in a few minutes. They've zoned in or keyed in that that's where they want to be. And so what we asked Rob Fellows to do was ask them to present us with a proposal. He did. They gave us a proposal, which was a very rough draft proposal. That proposal was sort of a contract. And it's my understanding that that contract, when it was given to us and was shown, was actually in the community, and what they have out there isn't a final copy of all the negotiations that have happened since then. So what I'm showing you right now is a document that is representative of our work in the school district to say we don't do this very often. We've had companies and we've had churches actually be with us before, but the Seven Hills is interested in a longer commitment than what you might see with some of the other contracts we have where people are using and renting our facilities. So concept is concerned, we've done it before. We do it all the time where we are renting our facilities and we are actually making money for those things. This one was a little different in the sense that when they looked at the auditorium, they were pleased with the amenities in the room, with the carpet, with the chairs, with the size and all that. But what they had concerns about is with the worship that takes place in the way that they video and send that out to other remote locations. They wanted to upgrade as part of this proposal, the sound system, the light system, basically all of the things that are electronic in that room. And at the particular time that they were talking to us about it, we had estimates of about $400,000 worth of equipment to be able to upgrade that room. So with that in mind, we started talking about the logistics of, okay, we understand that you have interest in donating some money. There's a lot of other things that go along with the utilization of a school facility. So that's when the school district began to look in the local area. And what you have in front of you, you'll see in the top column there, it says Forest Hills School District / Seven Hills. You will see LD. And if you go to the bottom, that means there's a local district in the area. I didn't think it was appropriate to put that district's name on this document, although all of this is public. If someone wanted to know or really had an interest in that, they could find that out. But out of respect for these other districts, I didn't feel that this particular document needed to have it on there. You'll also see the third column to the right is another local district, and you'll notice that one of them is working with Crossroads, which is like Seven Hills, same type of organization, and then the other last one there is Crossgate. I think there's a misspelling there, but Crossgate up there at the top. Okay, so what we did is we began to take a look at the contract. We began to take a look at the circumstances or the amount of time that people were utilizing facilities. And so I'm going to go through this with you right now. Contract length in Forest Hills is recommended to be a 5-year contract. You see the other two are 2 years and 1 year. Well, this caused me and others to pause for a minute. But I will tell you that our agreement with Mercy Hospital is a 10-year agreement. Our agreement with Pepsi companies, Coca-Cola companies, companies that provide the district with lower pricing on utilities and things like that are typically contracts that extend out a bit because those companies are investing in something of greater than just a rental fee with our school district. We're going into more of a relationship that is long-term, that's becoming a business relationship where we're trading facilities, we're trading expertise. You take a look at the Mercy model, all that they bring to our school district, they are investing in us. So when someone says they want to invest $400,000 into our school system, they're hoping that we can have a relationship that extends over a 1 year, 30-day, everybody says we're out. That's not the way they want to invest their money. So although they are a worshiping group, they're also a group of business people as well. So the 5-year contract is different than what you see in the other two. But as we go down the page, you'll see that the times for services are typically the same amount of time. They ask for 4 a.m. It's a little bit of travel for them, living not in the Ohio area. And some of the setup in a new situation, those times could change over time. But basically what they're asking is, may we utilize your your high school auditorium from during these times on a Sunday? Well, we can't really answer that question if we don't go back and talk to our directors, if we don't go back and talk to the people who are in that facility, who are using it, athletics that come in, all of the things that happen in a school year. And so we needed to go back and talk with all those folks, including our PTA, the groups that are working with us. And what we find is that on Sunday, our facilities are available during those times. Typically, we are not in use at those times. And we did talk to those who are doing performances out of the auditorium, and those times work for them as well as for us. And so the timing of this is not something that the administration is recommending to the Board of Education without having gone out and done quite a bit of investigation with people who are using that, who know the logistics of the room, so forth and so on. It's also important to know that when the original contract or draft contract went out on this, Seven Hills was looking at, can we use the auditorium? Can we use 6 classrooms? And as we negotiated and time went along, we were not going to go into classrooms. What we decided was we don't want to have Monday morning, even with as much preparation, cleanup, and all of the things that Seven Hills is suggesting that they're going to provide. We didn't want to have 6 classrooms every Monday that we were going to have to redesign, look for a chair, maybe find something like that. So they have agreed that we would not be using classrooms. We would use common areas, which is a lot easier for us and a lot easier for them to be able to maneuver. As far as carpet is concerned, they understand that there is going to be wear and tear on the carpet. The Forest Hills, the other 2 local school districts have discussed that. It's in our contracts that wear and tear is a particular part of the contract. What I'd ask you to do just for a second here is drop down to contingency funds. What you see in ours that does not exist in the other 2 is we're serious about a repair, molding that's bent, a chair that maybe is ripped or something like that. And there's a $50,000 contingency fund that the school has its discretion to be able to repair anything in real time that you do not see in the other 2 contracts. I would also say to you that what we've been able to accomplish in this agreement is that $50,000 is again another investment. And when the term of the contract is over, if that money has not been exhausted, we have, at least in draft form right now, that Seven Hills would leave that money with the district. Their concern is not as much about economics as it is providing a service to this community. And they did not think that that was a bad investment over time, recognizing that some things are going to need to be repaired. So you see that in our contract, but you don't, our draft contract, but you don't see it in others. So carpet, you see that obviously we have it covered, chairs, so forth and so on. Now you go to the rental fee. And there was no rental fee in the original proposal that went out. And we've taken a look at everything from utilities, toilet paper, hand towels, soap, wax on floors, all of the things that we need to make sure that we're able to ensure that when that facility is being used at that volume level, that we can take care of it and we can maintain it. You'll see in ours that it's a $36,000 per year investment or charge. Over the term, that's $180,000 that would be part of that did not exist in the original documentation that people in the community were looking at least it didn't exist to my knowledge. If you look to the one next to that, you'll see $69,000. It's a 2-year contract. And that equates to $345,000 if it was a 5-year commitment. And then you see the last one is $82,000 a year. It's a 1-year commitment. So as far as rental fees, we're a little bit low, but what we don't see in the other columns is the next line, $400,000 or an estimated $400,000 worth of equipment that has been reviewed by our own experts internally who use that room for the things that we provide as performances and we use on a daily basis. If you look to the right, you see our $400,000 matched up against a $15,000 commitment in the other organization, and you see nothing in the last. So although their rental fees are a little bit higher, I think over time, the investment of $400,000 speaks for itself on the equity of what our district would be receiving in a contract like this. If you continue to take a look, you see safety. We have in our contract, which we've talked about, work through supervision, safety, police officers, not only outside, but there will be individuals who are safety representatives who would be inside the building. You see that in all three of the school districts. With utilities, I think we've all wrapped that into the rent agreement or the rent. And the utilities are really not a huge expense for a Sunday afternoon. Yes, lights will be on. Yes, water will be used, so forth and so on. But we believe that they will be able to cover, that this figure will be able to cover those costs. We also know that they bring their own toilet paper. They bring their own paper towels in certain circumstances to ensure that they have all of those things. We already talked about the contingency, and you see custodians in all circumstances, individuals who are in the building to prep the building and to do the follow-up after the church representatives leave. Those things are paid for. Those salaries are paid for. So we would not be taking on additional overtime or anything like that with anybody who needed to clean the facility. And we have done numerous telephone calls. What we have learned with Seven Hills and other organizations like them, they want to leave the facility in a good place. They bring their own volunteers to ensure that they are cleaning up after the fact. They take pictures and they make schematics of how furniture is and how things are placed in rooms, and they go back through when they're finished and they review the schematics, they review the pictures, and they put things back as they were. We also have it set up that there will be meetings with our administration during the beginning of this process. So anything that maybe would not be happening to our agreement or to our standard, they come in, they will meet with us, we make arrangements. Again, their position is, we want to be in your community. We don't want to be creating hassles for anybody. That's not the purpose. And so they have lots and lots of volunteers. And I would say to this group, among the other partners that we have in our community, Seven Hills has been working with us with some of the things that are going on with our Feeding Kids. They want to do philanthropic, they want to do service-based things in our community. So that's their position, and we would continue to monitor those things over time to develop a relationship that's good for everyone. You see traffic on there. When I talked a little bit earlier about the school district making sure that they're taking care of everybody, not just ourselves, Seven Hills and Rob Fellows, the principal of the building, has had discussions with the church that resides on the corner that has been there for years and years and years. And we met with their representative who reviewed the times, reviewed the traffic, and there's an agreement that can be worked out very easily. So we did not want to be the bad neighbor who all of a sudden adds traffic in front of a church that has been existing for many, 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 many years and is a great partner to the school district. So we wanted to make sure we took care of that, and that has taken place. So as far as traffic is concerned, there will be police officers. We've already discussed with them, if this is an approved contract, about the patterns that traffic need to come up the hill and how it needs to go out, and so that it does not interfere with what already is an established parish within our school district. When you take a look at the total 5-year, if you look at all the contracts and you equated them on a 5-year basis, you see a figure there for Forest Hills that is approximately $630,000. And you see the other two on a 5-year period of time, what the numbers are there, $360,000 and $410,000. So obviously that investment on the front end for our school district is a big commitment. And then the other part down there at the bottom, even though I'm giving this to you tonight and I'm sharing this with you, all of this information regarding this this draft and these comparisons is subject to board approval. There has been no decision on this, but there have been board members as part of their committee who have been with myself, our operations folks, and the Seven Hills representatives who have asked many questions, have desired many changes to the contract that was proposed. It is a much thicker contract proposal than it was when it first started. And we have provided all of this information to our board members regarding the possibilities here. So I want to bring it to this group and let you, I'm going to stop now and respond. Alana and I can respond to questions you might have regarding this. Also, I did have a discussion with Dan Early, who is a member of this committee, about some things that were sent to him, some concerns that folks had, and I had a offline conversation with him. When I say offline, I mean it was not on a Google Hangout. It was a conversation based on what Dan had reviewed, and like any member of our community who would give me a call, we spent some time on it. And so if you have questions or concerns, I'd be happy to answer those.
Scott, this is Anne Marie. My question really is just related to the current environment that we're in. I mean, I work with a lot of folks at medical background and are in this whole COVID-19, and the thought is that even large gatherings won't be happening in the fall. It may be 2021. So what is the, I guess my concern is schools open back up in the fall, but what is the risk there of exposing a whole nother group of folks once a week into that space? And what kind of liability does that bring upon the school or the school district?
It's a great question, Anne Marie. And what was to be an October endeavor, if the board moved forward, has now been moved back to January because Seven Hills understands the environment just like you asked the question. They're having their services, as many parishes, they're all on hold right now. And we would, as you know, we would always work with Hamilton County health officials to ensure that what we're doing in our schools is meeting the safety requirements that we have locally, as well as what the governor is saying. And we would not want to be stepping out beyond what the recommendations and the rules are that are coming from the governor's office regarding safety and security.
I just wonder if somehow that's written into the contract. I mean, I just feel as if we're in a new world now. That obviously the Hamilton County and the governors are, I would think, the bare minimum rules. But are we looking at anything to ensure that maybe it's a little bit above and beyond that for our school district and the protection of the students and staff?
Sure. I mean, absolutely. We're talking about, just on another subject, we're talking about closing out of the school this year. The recommendation is 6 foot. Every 6 feet you have an X. Ours are all going down as 8 feet. We have an X. Students, they don't stay in their space, things like that. So I recognize and respect your position about we need to do more than just the minimum standard. And certainly in something like this, we'd be watching that closely. Very good point. Thank you.
But Steve Haynes, independent of following all public health local orders and things, Scott, is this the first time a church has reached out to the district to use the facilities in this way?
No, it isn't. It's my understanding that a local parish did that years ago, not in the recent past, but years ago, and I think it was a 1-year commitment. Dr. Haynes. So it was a circumstance like this one. The goal here, Seven Hills is saying our goal is we want to have our own place. Given how long it takes to find land in this area, and if we did, and when we do find land, getting it developed and building something is our issues. But we want to build our parish and then have a home for them. We don't want to be in the Forest Hills School District beyond the 5-year time period. But yes, we have done this in the past, but not at this level.
And Scott, Steve Higgins again, sorry. I imagine there are many different community groups and others who have reached out for use of facilities and have contracts, as you described, with the district. Is this different in some way from other community groups that would have approached and have had contracts similarly with the district?
No, not in the sense that we follow a process to be able to review the request, to be able to make arrangements through negotiated contracts if it is that extent, to ensure that the district as well as the individuals who are utilizing the facilities have a partnership. We would go through a process. All of these documents that would be presented to the board have gone for our legal counsel. They meet church and state requirements across the state and nation. Are within our policies for our usage. And so, like the hospital, we have a set of standards. And then when something comes along, we take it through our policies and make sure that each one is addressed in a way that is related to whatever the recommendation or the request is. We certainly talk with our legal counsel and then make a recommendation to the board that is in the best interest of our students first, and then the agreement second. So I believe that's what we've done here in preparation for a board decision. Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, or
I think Dan is on mute. I think Dan, I know he's trying, it looks like he's trying to talk. He's still on mute.
okay. Dan Early, are you comment?
Am I
There you are. Okay.
live? Am I live? I guess I am. Scott, I would share with you 3 big picture issues. I trust we have counsel that is drafting the document, the lease. The first big picture issue I see that we need to be sure that is getting accomplished, and that is that we're expecting $400,000 to be spent by them, paid by them, and not leased by them, because ultimately the title, if you will, needs to be held by the district, whether it's initially or later. So I think we need to be sure that there's no question that we are getting the value we think we're getting. Secondly, in any leases, there typically are cancellation clauses on both sides. And they may have a variety of reasons that they might want out down the road. And if it's just untenable for us, for whatever reason, we'd want to be able to get out. The third one would be if there's a lease default, non-payment, or other default provisions, that ought to be clearly spelled out. And I assume our counsel will address all of those, but I just wanted to bring those up.
Dan, there's a donation agreement that we have.
Okay.
Language in that as part of the contract that is not before you. And it talks about at the end of the agreement, the equipment that is in there stays. So that language is in there. Thank you for that one. And tell me about your last one again, because I think I've got some reference material here that I could.
I was speaking of lease defaults. There's always a default paragraph in all leases where you can evict the tenant. And under what circumstances that can be done. And we certainly want to be sure that we have the flexibility to do it, particularly if they're not paying rent.
I'm, all right, I'm gonna notate that. The other one was easy for me to find in this contract.
Okay. Is this their contract or ours?
Their contract was given to us, and then our lawyers have gone and recrafted it. So
Okay.
it started out as a proposal, not necessarily a contract, and it has been crafted into a contract with specific lines, issues, all of the things that have been questions along the way. So we've been able to put those things in contract that are more favorable for the school district. Again, I think the one that went out, people, including myself, would say that's not going to work the way it's written. And so we've gone back and we've taken a closer look at a lot of that, and not a lot of it, all of it. And we have made those adjustments. Also, again, legal eyes have been on it in the course of the next few months.
Thank you.
Okay.
Scott, are you looking for an endorsement by the committee, the council? What types of,
Well, whenever you look at things, Dr. Fagans, there's generally, like what Dan is saying, think of this, think of that. Is it a good deal? So I've given you comparison information that would suggest that just dollars and cents investment, that the contract that is being presented to our board in draft form right now is a significant investment, and is when compared with others, shows that our district is going to achieve a pretty good deal, so to speak, given those numbers and what's happening in other places. The 5-year is certainly the one factor that is not consistent in the other two, but neither is the $400,000 donation of the equipment. So that's something for us to consider. As far as a recommendation or an endorsement, what I always lean on from this group is this, you're all business folks, you're all involved in transactions and important investments. Given the circumstances of this contract, notwithstanding what Anne Marie said regarding safety, security, and all those things that we would have to do regardless of whether it was this group or any other, does it sound to you like this is a direction that would be one that we should continue to pursue based on the information you have?
thanks, Scott. Well, I'll just say for one, feel like you've really done a good due diligence here, especially in reaching out to local church, and other things. I think that this is use of facilities. I believe the district's goal is to partner with communities that come forward, and this seems like a very reasonable partnership, and it seems like an amount of fund money over 5 years that for use of facilities that seems reasonable and within the community averages as presented here. That would be my thought.
Thank you. Other comments, or shall we move on to 5-year forecast and Alana? Okay. Alana, you're on.
There we go. It took me a bit to unmute. Sorry about that. Anyhow, I just wanted to talk a little bit about our budget and been going on and over the past month and a half, and a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty going on. I've been getting quite a few questions about the impact of the COVID-19 on our budget. And while they're very good questions, they're still questions that we have at this time. There's a lot of unknowns right now in terms of where our state and federal funding levels will be going forward for the rest of this fiscal year, which our fiscal year ends on June 30, so we only have a couple of months left in our current fiscal year. But then we have questions as to what the impact of this is going to be on our budget going forward. We, of course, have spent a lot of time talking to our state experts, our state associations, and what they've told us is that the longer the pandemic and the restrictions, the economic restrictions linger, the greater the negative impact is going to be on our budget. So that's kind of a common sense thing. And as we've seen over the last month, it appears this isn't going away anytime soon. What does remain to be seen is what the impact is going to be in terms of how the state pulls in our funding and what happens at the federal level. Now, we've all heard that the federal stimulus is a $2 trillion stimulus package, and it sets aside $13.5 billion in dedicated funding for K-12 education nationwide. They are setting up a stabilization fund to manage the distribution of this 13.5 million. And they have also said that the funding can be used for a broad range of educational purpose. The federal stimulus package for K-12 also includes $3 billion for governors to use at their discretion to assist K-12 and higher education entities as we deal with the fallout from the virus pandemic. As part of the package, the federal government has also set aside nationwide $8.8 billion dedicated to child nutrition programs to help ensure students receive meals when schools are not in session. Now, in order for the states to access this money, states have to agree to provide funding to K-12 in our upcoming fiscal years 2021 and 2022. That's at least the same as the 3-year average of past educational funding in the state. So when you look at the state of Ohio, that means that the state could cut our funding by 5%. If they cut every district the same, which we know they do not necessarily treat every district the same, but they can cut overall state funding by 5% and still meet that 3-year averaging requirement. A 5% cut in our state funding is just over $1 million a year. In addition to that requirement, the CARE package or the federal stimulus package also gives the United States Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, the authority to waive that 3-year requirement. So in looking at it from a conservative standpoint, we really don't have much guarantees going forward as to what that state funding has to be. As far as how we will access that funding, all federal money flows to Ohio school districts through the Ohio Department of Education. I know that ODE was going to be on a phone call with the federal government today at 2 o'clock, discussing the where's, when's, and what's as to how that money is going to flow to us here in the school district. Superintendents and treasurers, so Scott and I will get an email once ODE works out how school districts in Ohio can either access, we might have to do an application. It may come to us in just a lump sum amount, but Scott and I will receive an email from ODE explaining to us how we go about accessing those funds. So to talk a little bit about what does this mean for our local and state revenues? Well, like I said, we only have 2 months remaining in our current fiscal year. And we actually have already received all of our property tax revenues for our fiscal year 20, which ends June 30th, 2020. So it's not going to impact our property taxes in this current fiscal year. But as we move on to the upcoming fiscal years, and again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, the longer the economic disruptions continue, the larger the negative impact is going to be. So we're going to see in our property taxes, we're likely to see higher delinquency rates, as well as if property tax valuations reduce, we will also see reductions in terms of just overall property taxes. As you know, and we've talked about many times in our group here, property taxes make up about 68% of our revenues. So taking a look at state revenues make up 29% of what we receive here. And I think it's important to know when we look at the state revenues at the end of February, our state was in a pretty strong position. The state's general fund revenues were 1.6% over estimates. So we were coming into this pandemic in a fairly strong position from the state standpoint, from state revenues to their general fund. When we go to March, March monthly revenues were down 7.6 from what the monthly March revenue estimates were. So that's a scary trend for the state general fund as time continues. But at the end of March, due to the fact that we had been doing better in the first 2 months of the year, the end of March, the state's calendar year to date, the first quarter, is up 0.9% over estimates. We know that's not going to stay the same. Unfortunately, we do know that's going to go down. So why am I telling you how the state's doing? Because how they're doing is going to obviously depend on how we do. We've been told today that the governor is currently working with members of his administration on the school budget. There is a chance that we may have reductions yet this year. We have 4 payments out of 24 left at this point in time. And again, within the next 2 weeks, we should know what sort of reductions or what sort of impact this is going to have on our budget for both this year. And we're hopeful that he will give us some clue as to what will happen for the second year of the biennium. So we're kind of in a waiting pattern to hear what's going on there. We are in the process of, in our own budget, tracking the effects and the impacts of what's happening on our revenues, what revenues are going down, the additional expenditures that we've had to make. And also there have been obviously some costs that we haven't had, such as bus fuel and teaching subs, since we aren't in session. So we are keeping track of additional expenditures, revenue shortfalls, and things like that as we go forward. So as you can see, there's a lot of unknowns coming up in our budget right now. We're paying close attention to what our state and federal governments are telling us. I know that Scott spends a lot of time on video chats with the superintendents and the lobbying agencies and their associations, as well as I spend a lot of time on video chats with ODE, State Auditor's Office, and the like to try and figure out what the impact to our budget is. But as many of you who watch Governor DeWine at 2 o'clock, you can see he's just still trying to figure out the direction of the state and when he can start reopening our economy. And like him, all we can do is go slow and steady, stay safe, because it won't do us any good to reopen it and then have to close it back down again. But again, I know I'm a broken record. Here I go again. Until the length of the economic closures is definitely going to determine the impact on our budget. That said, I don't know if you have any questions on where we're going with this. The 5-year forecast does need to be updated at the end of May. So we're hoping for some clear direction from our state and federal government within the next couple of weeks so that we can adjust our assumptions so that our 5-year forecasts can guide us a little bit further in the coming days. So any questions? Treasurers know how to bring down a room with the bad news. Scott, you're still
Alana?
muted. Yes.
Alana? This is Bill Lyon.
Hey, Bill.
Hi there. So I would rather have someone who tells it like it is rather than just making us happy. I appreciate everything you're doing with this. I'll also chime in that I think that for the other question you had, Scott, given this, it would be imprudent not to at least be exploring an opportunity to rent a high school out. So thank you for exploring that. And I will have to hop off the call very soon. So thanks for hearing me out.
Thanks, Bill.
Alana, this is Teresa Kaufman.
Hi, Teresa.
I just had a quick question for you. It might not be a huge savings, but is there any way to capitalize on the low gas prices? Like, do we have fuel tanks at the transportation center that we may be able to,
Good question. We do have fuel tanks, and I'm sure that our transportation director is making sure those are full at this point in time.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Thank you, Alana. This is the part of the meeting I wanted to share what's happening educationally in our school district. And Bill, I know that you have to check out. I want to thank you and the Forest Hills Foundation for all you've done to help us feed more than 160 families, 150 students every day in our school district. So the foundation has been a partner in that and has been phenomenal in its work to help us feed our students and take care of our families. So before you get off, thank you very much for that. We appreciate it greatly. One of the things that we've been trying to do in a very short period of time is switch from the traditional system that all of us know in public education to one that is dramatically different. And we're doing that like the hospitals are in a very short period of time, trying to make sure that we're taking care of our students. Before I get, well, I'm just going to go through this, and then there's a couple of comments I have, and certainly I will answer questions, but I want to try to go as quickly as I can. If you don't have children in the school system right now, but maybe you have brothers, sisters who have them, grandchildren, whatever it might be, you know that we've made a dramatic switch. And one of the things we tried to do in the beginning of that process, after we had gone through it for a little bit, is say, we think we're doing a good job here. Let's see what people are experiencing at home, because it has dramatically changed the home environment, given the fact that a lot of people on stay-home rules also have work to do like the rest of us, like this meeting tonight, while they're supervising children who otherwise would be, nestled in their seats in classrooms with teachers. So what we did is we sent out a survey, and the first slide you see here of the 793 people who responded is a pretty good cross-section of all of our buildings responding. So it wasn't just one building that gave us responses. We've gotten information from everybody. So that helps us better kind of have a feel for everybody has sort of leaned in to give us some information about how things are going. Next slide, you see, now this is during the practice week. And when we say practice week, that was the first week of school for remote learning. And equity and access to equipment is extremely important. So when we use the term practice here, it was a lot about kids having the equipment. Have we set up, if you don't have access at home, your hard paper copies that will be coming to you? Do you have everything in front of you? And is the work, are you able to log in? Do your parents know how to help you with that in the first stages of this? And then as we've started to unveil more learning, more teaching, how's it going? So what you see here is during practice week, remote learning activities were provided by all of my children's teachers and most of my child's teachers. So what you find out is in that first week into the second week, 94% of the people who gave us a response back were either, my teachers are working with my child individually and or most of the teachers are. So we knew that we had good access and good content early on in the process. The next slide that you see there is the amount of learning activities provided by the teacher. Was it too little, too much, just right? What was it? Because again, the format changed. We're in people's kitchens, dining rooms, living rooms right now. So is this working in your family? And do you believe as a parent that your child is getting enough information, the rigor is there, and this is a somewhat quality experience given the fact that it's changed so quickly? What we found out here is that 87.2% of the people that were involved felt like it was either, just right, or it was maybe even too much or too little there that you see. So what we found is we had about a 75% sweet spot there. And when we get to the bottom of the document that I'm presenting, you'll see the comments that fill in why you might see blue, why you might see red. Right here, we've got about 75% of our parents who are thinking that, okay, my child is receiving the appropriate amount of work. I have to help, and maybe there could be even more rigor. Next slide that you see there is the learning activities. Were they completed individually, or independently by my child, or were they completed with parent assistance? And again, I would imagine that from our feedback, if you're in the 48.4%, you're probably a parent of a student who has 6th through 12th grade, age level. If you're in the 46.4% there, it's very possible that a lot of assistance is happening from parents because they're younger children. I would also say in the red category for those students who have special needs, who have special design programs for them, I'm certain and I am thankful, so grateful that the parents have help us kind of transition with the students. So the blue is probably most likely your high school kids. The red is most likely your elementary students, with a sprinkling there of students with special needs whose parents have really done yeoman's work in the home to try to ensure that the child is getting a great opportunity given the circumstance that we're in. The next one, if parent assistance was selected, please describe the amount needed. So here you see a little bit deeper dive here. That it was appropriate for the students, more than usual, but manageable for the students. My assistance was needed with all aspects of the work. We don't want parents to be assisting with the learning. We want them to be in a supervisory role. This slide shows us that they're in that place, they're leaning in, they're probably, they are not probably, they're doing more than what they typically would. But, the smallest part of the pie chart here is about 11.6% is I'm really having to spend a lot of time with my child. And so we want that piece of the pie to close down. We want the blue to open up, but we have to get there over time. Next slide that you see here is the one that teachers are accessible to me or my child with questions, support, and instruction. So 82% 82.6% of the people who gave us input on this particular question are in an agree or strongly agree position. We'd love to have that last 17.4%, there. 10% of people are neutral. I'm okay with this right now. We want parents to see that their child and they have accessibility to their teachers, and that's something that's really important to us, especially if this is a longer process than what we currently have in place to get us through the end of the year. We really want this chart, we want that purple part of this chart to really expand quite a bit if this is going to be a normal circumstance for us as we look into the next year. The next graph, my child can access the tools necessary to complete the remote learning activities. Here again, what we're looking at is a figure of, if I've added it up correctly, 85.5% of the people who are leaning in and who are watching from home, supervising kids, helping them. 85% of the people are saying, you know what, we can get on. We have access. We know what we're doing. We know the login. We can get to the links. We can view the presentations. We are able to download and get into the Google Hangouts and things like that with our teachers. So we're feeling good about this. Obviously, we'd want that strongly agree to open up more if this becomes our new norm. But right now, we're feeling pretty good. We always want to get better, but we're feeling pretty good. About 85% of the children out there and their parents feel like, they have the necessary things to be able to do the work in their home space. Last one here is communication from my child's school teacher and district is good. It's either too little, too much, or just right. We have about 12% of the people who would like us to increase our communication. I feel good at this particular time, given all the changes that we're making in our school system and all the differences that we're making in our teaching and learning. I just got interrupted. Somebody came in behind me. Things that are happening in the classrooms, or that would be happening in the classrooms, that are happening in the home. So people are saying, you're communicating well with us. We can get to you. We can access you. We're getting information that's helpful to us and it's helpful to our children. And so we feel good about that. And again, we always want to improve. We always want to make sure that everybody has clear, concise information. They understand what they need to be doing and doing, and how they can access more information from us if necessary. So in summary, yes.
Excuse me, it's Amory. I just had a question on that last slide. Is there a way to disaggregate the data and determine where those answers came from? Like if it's one particular school? I mean, I'm just thinking that because I feel where I'm.
Can answer that for me. Adam, are you with us?
Because that could easily be, I would think addressed if it is one particular school or, a couple, and that may close that gap.
Yes. Good point. I appreciate that. Parent feedback summary, pretty much everything that I just said. What I want to do, we don't like to focus on the negative, but I would like you to drop to the last two bullets there, the last two arrows there. There are opportunities for teachers to provide more instruction with assignments. Okay, we understand that. And then parents that are working remotely are trying to find the right balance and approach to support their children's learning during this time. Some parents report wanting clearer, streamlined guidance from teachers so they can help ensure tasks are completed. So our initial sort of volley into this, or our initial look into this information, shows us that for the most part, people out there are feeling good about what's happening with their children and what's happening in schools. When we think about a remote learning experience, though, there are some things we need to think about. And that's part of that feedback from parents and part of the places in our pie charts that we want to expand and do a better job. remote learning, blended learning, project-based learning that's taking place in a kitchen versus a classroom, Google Hangouts, access to technology, ability to adjust schedules, provide times for students to link in with teachers, to have intervention time, to have acceleration time, to be able to ask questions. All of that takes time to be able to put that together in a way that makes sense for everybody who is participating in the process. So for us as a school district, when we think about step one, does everybody have access? Does everybody have a computer? Does everybody have what they need to be able to engage and to participate? That's the first level. We're in a very good place there. Engagement is very important. The next part of this is changing from, a remote learning situation that's a hybrid model into more of this is a real online learning experience. Quality of instruction, types of learning management systems that you're using with students, access to those things, and clear, concise, as people said, communication, and developing a more sophisticated online learning opportunity for children. That's not going to happen in a 3-week, 4-week period of time. That's going to take some time for us to be able to transition into something that is a sophistication level that a Forest Hills education generally is presented at or provided to our students. We are working on that with the way that we are providing professional development in this area with our teachers as we continue down this path, in the way that we organize our teachers, in the way that we have our meetings with teachers online, in the exemplars and in the models of instruction that we are finding and making places for them to be able to go access that information and to be able to share that information among themselves, and to ensure that what's happening in these buildings is consistently happening across all of the buildings. That's a lot of work. We're up for it and we're moving in that direction. So that's level 2 of this. And then level 3 is making sure that we are truly engaging these kids in work that makes sense to them and that is advancing their learning. All of that while we are balancing or trying to balance the needs of special needs students in our school district. This is not a complaint. This is a responsibility of me as a superintendent to be able to find ways to streamline, to more effectively meet the needs of students who have special needs. And so that's a big part of this as we continue to move forward. We do not want to create a learning gap, advance an equity gap, or anything like that. So we have to work very closely with that particular student and their families to ensure that we're providing the best we can in this very difficult time for them. And so, I guess what I'm sharing here tonight is that our initial feedback from parents is good. We want to be better in the areas that we highlighted throughout this presentation. We know that there's a level of sophistication that continues to need to be developed, and all of this needs to happen pretty quickly if we're going to be in this circumstance next year. The second part of that is the management of a school district now trying to remotely close what would typically happen physically in the last 3 or 4 weeks of the school year. We're dealing with seniors who are experiencing some remorse, depression about no graduation, no prom, no senior activities, no. And, am I going to get my diploma? Will it be remote? I'm off to the military. Will you even have graduation before I'm called to duty? All of those things are important. 6th grade graduations, 3rd and 4th grade changes and things like that. There's so many end of the year things that happen. I mean, all this stuff, retirements and teachers moving and teachers coming in, students the same. Closing down a school year in this environment and not having access to our kids and our family is very, very difficult. So our number one priority right now in all of this is communication with our students and with our families on the closure of school, while we're trying to maintain a rigorous, meaningful educational experience. I I should probably stop now because this has been my work and I've been in my basement working on this for a few weeks. But it's serious stuff, folks. It is a pleasure to work in a school district that has the kids, the families, people like yourself in the community who wants us to be successful. It is an absolute pleasure. So it's hard work, but it's not fun. It's certainly challenging, and it's enjoyable when things go right. And that's what we want to do. We want to do the right thing for kids and families.
Well, Scott, Steve Bagans, I think it's an outstanding survey, and thanks for sharing it. And it's very encouraging. How are the teachers doing? What types of supports and things are you in the district doing to really lift up and support the teachers in this time?
That's a good question. That's a good question because more and more we're hearing it's an interesting thing for individuals who are not in education. There is a real issue mentally right now with teachers who cannot see their kids on an everyday basis. That relationship that develops over time, that day in, day out, we're together in this thing. They're really feeling detached and they're really feeling like they need to do something to see their kids, to engage their kids, to in other ways than just through the curriculum. And so we are putting plans together where we're working with our administrative team. That's been our this week of meetings about the closure of school. And what we've done, Steve, is we're setting parameters for specialized things that can happen with students and teachers that meet the expectations of social distancing and safety. And what we're doing is we're going to take our plans and we're going to share them with individuals such as yourself and Kesterman to say, hey, take a look at this. Does this plan look like it is a plan that will work and that is a safe arrangement for kids? And so we're doing that that way. We're also checking in, principals are checking in, HR department is checking in with teachers. We go through these things. They have their Google Hangouts. We're doing, believe it or not, there's games that are taking place in evening time where they're having competitions, just like the old-fashioned quiz games where people are trying to connect and trying to stay in touch with each other. So the types of things we're doing. If we were in an environment, Dr. Fagans, where we started this way, we'd probably be a lot better with this. But as we continue to go down this road, we're realizing that professional development and opportunities for us to deal with the social emotional needs, not only of our students, but of our staff, is going to be very important as we go down this road.
Thank you, Scott. Other questions. So I know that you and the superintendents of all the schools really talk frequently. What are you learning that's probably not going to ever go back to the way it was? Everything's going to be different, but what is it about education that just stands out as that thing that will probably not return back to the way it was?
I think there's going to be much larger reliance on varied schedules, varied opportunities to be able to engage kids in different ways with their teachers. I think there's a great possibility that we're going to see a lot of that type of 21st century stuff that we've been talking about over time. I don't think that we're going to be going back real soon to an educational system that really is not student-centered, student-based. It'll be less of what we know now. The traditional setting is going to change personalization than what we've seen in the past. I also think short term, and it could be the long term. How are we going to be able to do this with a significant amount of reduced resources? That's what Alana and I continue to be hearing more and more of is that this is an economic issue as much as it is a health issue. And the reason I say less traditional, and more about technology being incorporated and remote being incorporated is because there's a possibility, and we know we can do it because we've done it in the last 6 weeks. The traditional 5 days sitting in a classroom seat might not be the way it goes. It could be more of a collegiate-based environment where we're meeting with teachers a few times a week. We have things happening in the evening time. We're working in labs, or we're responsible for participating in online remote conversations with our peers. We're doing projects in that way more remotely than what we currently do in classes right now. We're utilizing time differently. We're utilizing space differently. We're utilizing staff differently. In a remote circumstance, obviously, more kids per staff member. I don't want to make any predictions about staff reductions or things like that down the road, but I certainly think that we're going to need to be thinking about this because I do believe that the resources are going to be tight over time. And how can we see things? We can cut. We can cut, we can cut, we can cut. We can eliminate people, we can eliminate administrators, we can cut programs ad nauseum to reach a dollar figure. That's something that can happen. But are we going to plan? Are we going to look out over the horizon and give ourselves time to plan so that cuts are really reductions in different ways of using resources that we have, so that we're not just eliminating things, we're actually capable of advancing things, but doing it in a more efficient way than what we are currently set up to do. These are challenging questions for the community. I don't know how bad it gets down the road. I don't know what the future is going to be. But if it is a significant reduction, we're not, in my opinion, with all due respect to the support and the way that our community provides us with the things we have, we're not going to be able to go to the local community and say, hey, we need 25% more. It's not appropriate to go to the local community in that fashion. They will require that we redesign, that we come up with ways that provide the same Forest Hills quality education in a potentially different model. And that requires a lot of work to move a teaching staff, administrative staff to that new plateau. Big work, but it's going to have to be done in quicker time than we ever thought it might have ever needed to happen.
Scott, this is a well done presentation. I find it interesting, and I find it interesting that you were willing to commit the funds and had somebody like Adam or whoever it is putting the analysis of all this together. Are we allowed to share this with anybody yet?
I believe everything that I have talked about, if I understand Adam correctly, anything that I presented has been on the screen for individuals. Is that correct? So yes, Rich, I didn't want to answer until I was absolutely sure, but there's nothing here that is not owned by the public, and so it's available to anyone who would want to see it.
It's a pretty good story, I think, for where we've come from in record. I mean, virtually overnight, you've committed, and the group and the teachers and the administration have made great progress. Is this something worthy of the press? Is it worthy of our next newsletter?
You're going to see a lot in the next newsletter about it. Last night on WLWT Channel 5, there was a brief story on the Forest Hills schools where they went into the Turpin teacher's classroom. They spent some time with me talking about the online learning, and now that the governor has made his decision, what do we expect? I have not in the last 6 weeks been as candid about what could happen in the future, because I hadn't been asked directly by anyone like Dr. Figgins or any one of you to say, hey, Scott, what do you think the future looks like? So as far as my comments that I made regarding what's the future look like, um, that's a Scott Preble's commentary and a question given to him in a meeting. That requires a Board of Education, a community, administration, teachers, families to lean in and say, what does our new normal look like? And I am more than up for the task of engaging in that conversation with our community, our Board of Education, and working diligently to provide that excellence at any means that we can, given the factors that have been presented to us that none of us thought were going to be this ever. So,
What I also find interesting was, since I've got a couple of kids with grandkids, multiple grandkids in a family, one of the challenges, and with some friends who have kids in the system and have more than 2 or 3 kids, is managing all the data coming in from all the different teachers. It's a project. I mean, you got to give the parents a pat on the back who are handling this. I'm glad I'm an old guy anymore, and my kids are doing all this. I'm supporting them when I can, but holy mackerel. Whoa.
well, I know a senior citizen that I have a good relationship with who's been working with his wife, and they've been teaching or helping their kids from the side in their condominium in the Forest Hills area. And they tell me that it is a lot about managing, and it is a lot about that executive functioning skills that we need our students to be able to develop. How can you compartmentalize? How do you arrange time in your day to ensure that you're getting your assignments done? Now, well, in between, you have to eat dinner and you have to cut the grass and you've got to work and you've got to do all these other things. So there are some life skills and some educational skills that are beginning to blend here in the family unit. That is kind of remarkable in a sense that we're all starting to help each other. But you're right, it is a lot. And even as an educator with 2 sons who are in their teen years, we're looking in and we're leaning over and we're making sure when the person says, yes, my homework is done, that it is done and it is done well, because, you want to make sure that things are happening and children are learning. And we want to try to make that as easy as possible in Forest Hills for the parents who are trying to help out with this situation. And you're right. They're awesome. They have been awesome to work with. No question. And patient, I will tell you that.
About how many students do we have in the entire district?
7,300.
Wow.
Scott, this is Dan. Do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi. Um, Picking up on some of what Dr. Fagan said and others have said, you deal with so many stakeholders, and I truly applaud your efforts on the survey of parents. I would think it might be time well spent to craft a survey to deal with the teachers, because they have, I'm sure, their issues that if you could quantify them in a similar type of format as you did for parents, it might open your eyes to issues that you're not hearing, and you can share with the teachers the fact that you're very much on top of it. There's so many stakeholders, not only parents, not only kids, not only teachers, not only taxpayers, that I think we have to be cognizant of and communicate with in any way we can. And
That's a great point.
I know all you need is more work. But
Well, it's a great point you bring up, Dan. We met again today. We've met more times than we typically do with our Teachers Association leadership. And during those meetings, they're giving us feedback on the teachers. But we have not done what you just said. We haven't had a survey. What we are meeting with is, the organization is working within itself to ensure that the administration is aware of some of the things that are snags and some of the things that we need to be doing. So we're doing it that way. But I think there's wisdom in your comments, so people could do it freely, and we would get more authentic feedback from a survey like this. I think that's a good point on your part.
Indeed, welcome. Great job.
Yeah, I agree as well about the teachers, because I've heard just comments, and I work in the space with nonprofits, and I've had just this week twice organizations in mental health talking about the teachers are an overlooked group, that people are focusing on parents and the students, but not realizing that the teachers fit in that parent group, but also the feelings that they're having, and that some of these mental health organizations are getting a lot of feedback from teachers asking for help, and just on tips and kind of how to deal with all this. But I mean, I do think we have to really, I think a personal survey to them would be very valuable, because I would think a number of them have kids of their own, so they're in a kind of that whole, not only, yes, I'm working from home, but I'm not expected to teach anyone else. That's not my job, but they have their own kids as well as teaching others. So I think I do worry about the teachers and the staff, that we need to kind of really lift them up or ask what they need, and how can we help them?
Thank you very much. I appreciate your support for our teaching staff. I really do. Thank you.
Just another thought. I'm just wondering, the support for the teachers is really remarkable. And I'm just wondering if it would make any sense for you or Alana to pen an email to the teachers only, indicating that we had this meeting tonight and that it was unanimous and overwhelming, the crowd and the comments that we made about the teachers and what a fine job they're doing.
Is that a motion that you're making, that this
that.
advisory council recommend that?
I will get that done. I promise you. I will do that.
I'm sure they will.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Moved by Rich, second by Megan.
I'll take care of that. I have it written down. Thank you all for that. We're talking today, it's a lot, and they want to serve their students and their families, and they're feeling detached, and they're feeling stressed, and they're feeling overwhelmed, but they continue to lean in, and they continue to do the best they can to give the best quality of education they can. So thank you for your comments, and I will make sure that. I want to thank everyone for your participation this evening. I want to thank everybody who is listening on live stream. I want to remind everybody, if there's something that you heard at the meeting this evening or you would like to have more information about, please do not hesitate to send an email to Alana or myself, or you can give us a call. I think at this particular time, emails work best because everybody, the office is tough on the phone numbers, but we certainly have our emails. So send us an email. Happy to help any way we can. I know there's a person out there who had some difficulty with live streaming this evening, who had contacted our offices a couple times just to make sure they could get on and participate. Hopefully you've been able to get on and participate and hear the things that are important to you. Thank you for giving us those calls, because we did make some adjustments in the way that we are putting this meeting out there so people could access it. So I appreciate that. So thank you all again. I hope everyone and your families are well and that you're feeling well. And I, again, from myself, she can certainly speak for herself. I want to thank all of you. And ladies and gentlemen, this guy who's called Adam Samuels, he is a teacher in our school district. And here he is tonight, like many others, doing what's necessary to ensure that the district rolls on. And without Adam Samuels, I would not have been able to conduct this meeting. So thank you very much, Adam. I appreciate it. Okay, everybody, closing comments. Thank you all. Have a wonderful Thursday evening, Friday, and a great weekend. Hope to really see you soon.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night.
Bye, Alana. Bye, Dan.